I'd rather finance a Cold War than another round of signature cocktails for Nadia's friends. That's what I was thinking Sunday morning, nursing my third cup of coffee and watching my fiancée apply her fourth layer of mascara. The apartment reeked of her vanilla perfume and my regret. "Holden, baby, you look awful," Nadia chirped, adjusting her designer dress in our bedroom mirror. "Maybe skip the mimosas today?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I wanted to tell her that awful was exactly how I felt after 3 months of wedding planning hell, but instead I managed a grunt. Nadia Mercer had turned our engagement into a full-time job, one that apparently required a PhD in floral arrangements and a minor in napkin folding. My phone buzzed. Bank alert. Another Venmo payment from our joint account. $3,000 to Brooks R. Same night Nadia claimed she was at a late bridal fitting. "Hey babe," I called out, keeping my voice casual. "What was that Venmo payment for yesterday? $3,000 to Brooks?" Nadia froze, mascara wand halfway to her lashes. In the mirror, I watched her face cycle through surprise, panic, then practiced innocence. "Oh, that? Just some wedding stuff. You know how expensive everything is." She laughed, but it sounded like glass breaking. "A girl needs options, right?" Options. If that dress came with options worth $3,000, it better include a car and a vacation to Hawaii. I'd been noticing things for weeks, the late-night fittings that ran until midnight, the giggly text messages she'd hide when I walked into the room, the way she'd suddenly become protective of her phone, taking it everywhere, even to the bathroom. But Brooks R? That name nagged at me. Then it clicked. Rylan Brooks, her ex-boyfriend from college, the failed musician who'd been sliding into her Instagram DMs for months. I pulled up our banking app while Nadia finished her makeup routine. There it was, a pattern of payments. $500 here, $800 there, all to Rylan Brooks. Our wedding fund slowly bleeding out to finance her ex-boyfriend's pathetic music career. "Ready for brunch, honey?" Nadia appeared in the doorway, looking like a magazine cover, all blonde highlights and practiced smiles. "Absolutely," I said, pocketing my phone. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The restaurant buzzed with the usual Sunday crowd, affluent couples picking at overpriced eggs Benedict while dissecting their neighbors' personal lives. Nadia's entourage had claimed the prime table by the window. Tessa, her influencer best friend who treated every meal like a photo shoot. Layla, her boutique co-worker who hung on Nadia's every word. And Freddie, her gay confidant who'd never liked me and made no effort to hide it. "Holden," Tessa squealed, already filming a TikTok. "You look so handsome. Ready to be a married man?" "Getting more ready by the minute," I replied, sliding into my seat next to Nadia. The conversation flowed like cheap wine, wedding gossip, social media drama, and enough passive-aggressive comments to fuel a reality TV show. I played my part, smiling and nodding while my brain worked overtime. Nadia was glowing, holding court like the queen bee she'd always been. She regaled the table with stories about cake tastings and venue visits, conveniently omitting the part where she was bankrolling her ex-boyfriend's rent. "Oh my God, speaking of venues," Freddie interrupted, leaning forward conspiratorially. "Did you guys hear about Madison's wedding disaster? The groom found out she was cheating literally at the altar." The table erupted in gasps and nervous laughter. Nadia's face went pale for just a second before she recovered. "That's horrible," she said, reaching for her mimosa. "I mean, who does that? If you're not happy, just be honest about it." The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. My phone buzzed again. Another bank alert. This time, a restaurant charge from last night. The same restaurant where Rylan had posted an Instagram story. Date night, apparently, funded by our joint account. I felt something snap inside me. Not rage, something colder. More calculated. "Actually," I said, setting down my coffee cup with deliberate precision, "speaking of being honest," the table went quiet. Nadia's eyes widened, sensing danger. "I have something to share with everyone." I stood up, raising my mimosa glass. "Nadia has something important to tell you all." "Holden, what are you—" "Go ahead, sweetheart," I said, my voice honey-sweet and razor-sharp. "Tell them about your honesty policy." Nadia's face cycled through confusion, panic, and finally, defiance. She stood up, chin raised, playing to her audience. "Fine," she said, her voice carrying across the restaurant. "You want honesty? The wedding's off. I don't love you, Holden. I haven't for months." The brunch crowd went silent. Phones appeared, recording. Tessa's TikTok was still rolling. I smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time in weeks. "Thank you," I said, pulling the engagement ring from my finger and setting it on the table. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite you all to a new celebration. Not a wedding, but a dodged a bullet party. Tonight, 9 p.m., Greg's Rooftop Bar. I tossed a 20 on the table and headed for the door, leaving Nadia and her friends in stunned silence. The real fun was just beginning. Greg's Rooftop Bar had the best view in the city and the sharpest bartender. Greg Morrison had been my best friend since college, and unlike Nadia's fair weather crew, he actually had my back. So she really said it in front of everyone? Greg asked, sliding a whiskey across the bar. Word for word. I don't love you, Holden. I took a sip, savoring the burn, in front of half the city's social media influencers. Jesus, what are you going to do? I pulled out my phone, showing him the banking app. See these transactions? Our joint account has been funding her ex-boyfriend's lifestyle for 3 months. Rent, studio time, fancy dinners, all on our wedding budget. Greg whistled low. That's cold, even for her. It gets better. Rylan Brooks, remember him? The guy who thought he was going to be the next John Mayer but couldn't carry a tune in a bucket? He's been living off our money while Nadia played the devoted fiancé. I'd spent the afternoon doing research. Rylan's social media was a goldmine of evidence. Photos from expensive restaurants, posts about his new studio space, even a picture of him holding cash with the caption, "Thanks to my angel investor." My angel investor, the woman who was supposed to be planning our wedding. So, what's the play? Greg asked. Phase 1 starts tomorrow morning. Every wedding vendor we hired, they're all getting cancellation calls. Caterer, photographer, venue, band, everything tied to my credit cards gets shut down immediately. Greg grinned, leaving her holding the bag. A very expensive bag. See, here's the thing about Nadia. She's great at spending other people's money, terrible at managing her own. Her boutique barely breaks even, and her parents cut her allowance when she turned 30. She's been living off our joint account for months. I'd discovered this little gem while reviewing our finances. Nadia's contribution to our shared expenses had dwindled to almost nothing. Her boutique, Petals and Stems, was hemorrhaging money faster than a punctured tire. You're going to bankrupt her? I'm going to let her bankrupt herself. I'm just removing the safety net. The next morning, I started making calls. The caterer was surprisingly understanding. Apparently, last-minute cancellations weren't uncommon in the wedding industry. The photographer was less sympathetic until I mentioned the adultery clause in their contract. The venue coordinator actually thanked me for the early notice. By noon, Nadia's phone was probably melting from vendor calls demanding payment for services they'd already contracted. Services she couldn't afford without access to our joint account, an account I'd quietly closed that morning. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Aunt Ruth had always been my favorite relative. 83 years old, sharp as a tack, and wealthy enough to buy and sell most of the city. She'd never liked Nadia, said she had grabby hands and empty eyes. Holden, darling, she said when I called. I heard about the engagement, so congratulations on your narrow escape. Word travels fast. Tessa posted 17 TikToks about it. The girl has no filter. Aunt Ruth chuckled. What can I do for you? I need information about a property. Nadia's boutique on 5th Street. Consider it done. Anything else? How do you feel about becoming a landlord? By 3 p.m., I had my answer. Nadia's boutique was 3 months behind on rent, surviving only because of a sympathetic property manager. The building owner was ready to sell to the right buyer. Aunt Ruth was definitely the right buyer. My phone buzzed with increasingly frantic texts from Nadia. What did you do to our account? The caterer is demanding $5,000 immediately. Call me now. I ignored them all. Instead, I drove to Nadia's boutique. And Petals and Stems occupied a prime corner location in the Arts District, all glass windows and exposed brick. Through the window, I could see Nadia gesticulating wildly at a man in a catering uniform. Her face was flushed, her perfectly styled hair showing signs of stress-induced tugging. I parked across the street and waited. The caterer left first, shaking his head. Then came the photographer, a young woman with purple hair and an expensive camera bag. She was followed by what looked like a florist. Ironic, considering Nadia owned a flower shop. Each vendor who left looked more frustrated than the last. My phone rang. Layla. Holden? Oh my God, is it true? Did Nadia really cheat on you? Interesting. I'd never mentioned cheating to anyone. Why would you think that, Layla? Well, I mean, the Venmo payments? And Tessa saw her Instagram story from last night. She was at Chez Laurent with some guy, but she told us she was at a fitting. Perfect. Nadia's own friends were connecting the dots. I don't want to spread rumors, I said carefully. But if you're curious about those Venmo payments, they're all public record. Username is Nadium Flowers. I hung up and waited. Layla was the biggest gossip in Nadia's circle. Within an hour, half the city would know about Nadia's financial infidelity. Sure enough, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Screenshots of Venmo payments were making the rounds on social media. Someone had even created a thread documenting Nadia's angel investor payments to Rylan. Through the boutique window, I watched Nadia answer her phone with increasing desperation. Her gestures became more frantic with each call. Then I saw him. Rylan Brooks, slouching down the street in ripped jeans and a leather jacket that had seen better decades. He looked exactly like what he was, a 35-year-old man still pretending to be a rock star. He slipped into the boutique through the back entrance. Even from across the street, I could see the argument that erupted. Nadia pointing at her phone, Rylan shrugging with practiced indifference. This was better than cable television. My phone rang again. This time, it was Mr. Mercer, Nadia's father. "Holden, son. I just heard about the engagement. I'm sorry it didn't work out." "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that." I also heard some disturbing rumors about financial irregularities, payments to some musician. I smiled. "I wouldn't know anything about rumors, Mr. Mercer, but if you're concerned about Nadia's finances, you might want to ask her about her business expenses." "I think I will. Thank you, Holden. You're a good man. Too good for my daughter, apparently." After he hung up, I sat in my car and watched the show. Through the boutique window, I could see Nadia's world crumbling in real time. Vendors demanding payment, friends calling with gossip, parents asking uncomfortable questions. And at the center of it all, Rylan Brooks, the failed musician who'd been living off my dime for months. But I wasn't done with him yet. Not by a long shot. Rylan Brooks lived in a converted warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of place that looked artsy in movies, but smelled like mold and broken dreams in real life. I'd found his address through the same Venmo trail that had funded his lifestyle. The building had no doorman, no security, and apparently no standards. Perfect for what I had in mind. I waited until Tuesday evening, when Rylan's Instagram story showed him at band practice across town. The lock on his apartment door was older than my car and about as secure as a paper bag. Inside, the apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Vintage band posters covered water stains on the walls. Empty beer bottles formed a small city on every available surface. And there, in the corner, sat his prized possession, a 1962 Gibson acoustic guitar that he'd probably bought with my money. I'd done my research. Rylan posted about that guitar constantly, calling it his baby and his muse. He'd even written a song about it, a truly terrible ballad called Six-String Dreams. I pulled out my toolkit. Nothing illegal, nothing that couldn't be explained as a prank between old friends. I carefully removed the nylon strings and replaced them with steel ones, the wrong gauge, too tight for the guitar's neck. Then I applied a thin layer of superglue around the inside of the case latches. On his coffee table, I left a note. "Pay your own rent, Rockstar. A concerned taxpayer." By the time Rylan discovered my handiwork, his precious guitar would be unplayable and his case permanently sealed, a small price to pay for 3 months of financial adultery. But I wasn't finished with Mr. Brooks. Wednesday night, Greg's rooftop bar was packed with the usual crowd of young professionals and social media influencers. I was holding court at my usual table, regaling anyone who'd listen with carefully edited stories about my lucky escape from marriage. That's when Rylan showed up. He burst through the entrance like a bad movie villain, scanning the crowd with wild eyes. His precious guitar case was tucked under one arm. Apparently, he'd managed to pry it open. "Holden," he shouted across the bar. "We need to talk." The entire rooftop went quiet. Phones appeared, recording. This was about to become very public, very fast. I stood up slowly, straightening my tie. "Rylan Brooks, everyone. Nadia's angel investor and my former friend." "You destroyed my guitar, you psychopath." I walked toward him, hands relaxed at my sides. "I'm sorry, I don't follow. Are you accusing me of something?" "Don't play dumb. The note, the superglue." "What note?" I asked innocently. "And why would I know anything about your guitar? I didn't even know you still played." The crowd was eating this up. Rylan looked around desperately, realizing he'd walked into a trap. "You know what you did," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "What I know," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "is that you've been living off my money for 3 months. So what I know is that you helped my fiancée steal from our joint account to fund your pathetic music career." Rylan's face went red. "She gave me that money willingly. She gave you stolen money. My money. Money that was supposed to pay for our wedding." I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough that people had to strain to hear. "Here's what's going to happen, Rylan. You're going to walk out of here, and you're never going to contact Nadia again. You're going to disappear from her life like the mistake you are." "Or what?" I smiled. Not a nice smile. Or I'll make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of man takes money from another man's woman. I'll make sure every venue, every club, every coffee shop open mic night knows that Rylan Brooks is a thief and a home wrecker. Rylan tried to look tough, puffing out his chest. You think you scare me? I leaned in close enough to smell the cheap beer on his breath. I don't need to scare you, Rylan. I just need to ruin you. And trust me, I'm very good at ruining people. Then I did something I'd never done before in my life. I slapped him. Not hard enough for assault charges, but hard enough to echo across the silent rooftop. Rylan stumbled backward, more from shock than force. The crowd gasped. Someone's phone captured the whole thing. Stay away from Nadia, I said calmly. Stay away from me. And next time you want to play Rockstar, use your own money. Rylan clutched his guitar case and fled toward the exit, his face burning with humiliation. The rooftop erupted in applause, but I still wasn't done with him. Thursday morning, Rylan's vintage Mustang, his other prized possession, was found in the parking garage beneath his building. Someone had been very creative with it. Sugar in the gas tank, tires slashed, and the words "loser" etched into every window. The security cameras in the garage had mysteriously malfunctioned the night before. I read about it on social media while drinking my morning coffee. Tessa had posted a dozen stories about the karma car, complete with photos and commentary. Layla had shared a thread connecting Rylan's public humiliation to his financial crimes. Even Freddie, who usually stayed above the drama, had posted a cryptic message about chickens coming home to roost. My phone rang. It was Nadia. You're destroying him, she said without preamble. Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How's the boutique? Don't play games with me, Holden. I know you ruined his car. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof? Silence on the other end. Nadia, are you there? I was asking about proof, evidence, the kind of thing you'd need if you were going to, say, call the police. You're sick. I'm practical. Your boyfriend stole from me for 3 months. He helped you commit financial adultery, and now he's facing the consequences of his choices. We never meant for it to happen this way. Ah, there it is. We never meant. Tell me, Nadia, when exactly did you mean for it to happen? When you first started sending him money? When you first lied about your late-night fittings? Or when you decided to humiliate me in front of half the city? I could hear her crying now. Good. The wedding vendors are demanding payment, she said. I can't afford... Not my problem anymore. You made your choice. My parents cut me off. The boutique is 3 months behind on rent. I'm going to lose everything. Some lessons are expensive, Nadia. Consider this graduate-level education in consequences. I hung up and immediately called Aunt Ruth. How's our real estate investment coming along? Finalized this morning, darling. I'm now the proud owner of 412 5th Street. Your little flower girl has until Friday to bring her rent current or face eviction proceedings. And if she can't pay, then I'll be looking for a new tenant. I hear there's a lovely coffee shop interested in the space. By Friday afternoon, Rylan had been evicted from his apartment, dropped from his band, and ghosted by every musician in the city. Social media had done its work. His reputation was radioactive. Nadia's boutique was next. The Mercer family estate sat on 10 acres of prime real estate overlooking the harbor. Old money, old traditions, and very old-fashioned ideas about family honor. Nadia had grown up in this world of privilege and expectations, which made her current situation particularly delicious. I knew she'd run home when everything else fell apart. It's what spoiled children do when their credit cards get declined. Saturday morning, I positioned myself at a coffee shop across from the estate's main gate. Through my binoculars, I watched the drama unfold. Mr. Mercer's Mercedes pulled up to the front door at exactly 9 a.m. He emerged with the posture of a man about to deliver an unpleasant lecture. Mrs. Mercer followed, her designer handbag clutched like a weapon. They'd seen the evidence I'd carefully leaked through social channels, bank records, Venmo screenshots, photos of Nadia and Rylan at expensive restaurants. Everything laid out in a neat digital trail that led directly to their daughter's financial infidelity. My phone buzzed with a text from Layla. OMG, Nadia's parents are furious. Freddie says they cut her off completely. Perfect. Phase 1 of the family intervention was complete. But I had bigger plans for tonight. Greg's rooftop bar was packed for my dodged a bullet party. What had started as a joke had turned into the social event of the week. Half the city's young professionals had shown up, drawn by curiosity and the promise of drama. I worked the crowd like a politician, accepting congratulations and sympathy in equal measure. Everyone wanted to hear the story of how I'd discovered Nadia's betrayal. I gave them carefully edited versions, each one more damaging to her reputation. The worst part, I told a group of influencers, wasn't the cheating, It was the lying. 3 months of looking me in the eye and pretending to plan our future while she was funding her ex-boyfriend's lifestyle. Tessa was live streaming everything, of course. Her followers were eating up the real-time gossip. That's when Nadia arrived. She burst onto the rooftop like an avenging angel, still wearing her designer dress, but looking like she'd slept in it. Her perfect makeup was smeared, her blonde hair disheveled. Behind her trailed Freddie, looking mortified. The entire party went silent. Phones appeared, recording. "You snake," Nadia screamed, pointing at me across the crowded rooftop. "You destroyed my life." I set down my whiskey and smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, my former fiancée, Nadia Mercer. The woman who taught me that forever apparently includes a clause about funding your ex-boyfriend's rent. The crowd laughed. Nadia's face went crimson. "You think this is funny?" she shrieked. "You ruined my business. You turned my friends against me. I exposed your lies," I interrupted, my voice carrying across the silent rooftop. "Everything that's happening to you is a direct result of your own choices." "I loved him." "You loved my money. Rylan was just the delivery method." Nadia looked around desperately, searching for support from her friends. But Tessa was filming, Layla was live tweeting, and Freddie looked like he wanted to disappear. "Tell them," she demanded, turning to Freddie. "Tell them how Holden stalked us, how he sabotaged Rylan's car." Freddie shifted uncomfortably. "Nadia, maybe we should just go." "No!" She spun back to face me. "I want everyone to know what kind of man you really are." I walked toward her slowly, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. When I reached her, I leaned in close enough that only she could hear. "What kind of man am I, Nadia? The kind who pays his own bills, the kind who doesn't steal from joint accounts, the kind who doesn't lie to the person he's supposed to marry?" She raised her hand to slap me. I caught her wrist gently but firmly. "Careful," I said, still speaking quietly. "You're already trending on 3 different social platforms. Do you really want to add assault to your highlight reel?" Tears started streaming down her face. The fight went out of her like air from a punctured balloon. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far." "But it did go this far, and now you get to live with the consequences." I released her wrist and stepped back. Someone in the crowd had been recording our conversation with a directional microphone. The whispered exchange was being broadcast live. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, raising my glass, "a toast to honesty, to consequences, and to the beautiful truth that actions have prices." The crowd raised their glasses. Nadia looked around at the sea of phones recording her humiliation, then turned and fled toward the exit. But as she passed the bar, she grabbed a glass of red wine and spun around. "If I'm going down," she snarled, "I'm taking you with me." She hurled the wine directly at my face. I sidestepped smoothly, and the wine splashed across a white banner that read, "Dodged a bullet party," in large black letters. The red wine soaked through the fabric, creating a pattern that looked disturbingly. The symbolism was perfect. "You missed," I said calmly, pulling out a handkerchief to dab a few drops from my sleeve. "But then again, accuracy was never your strong suit, was it?" The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Someone started chanting, "Dodged a bullet! Dodged a bullet!" Nadia stood frozen in the center of the rooftop, wineglass still in her hand, surrounded by dozens of phones recording her breakdown. The realization of what she'd just done, and how it looked, crashed over her like a cold wave. Security appeared at Greg's signal. 2 large men in black shirts who escorted Nadia toward the exit with professional courtesy. She didn't resist. The fight had gone out of her completely. As she reached the door, I called out one last time. "Nadia, you forgot something." I held up the engagement ring she'd left on the brunch table days earlier. "Actually," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "keep it. Consider it payment for the entertainment." I tossed the ring over the rooftop railing. It disappeared into the night, probably landing in some alley dumpster where it belonged. The crowd went wild, but I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The real finale was still to come. Sunday night, 11 p.m. Nadia's boutique sat dark and empty on 5th Street, a for-lease sign already posted in the window. Aunt Ruth worked fast when she wanted someone gone. I'd spent the day setting up my final play. 2 anonymous text messages, sent from different burner phones, timed perfectly to create maximum chaos. To Nadia. "Meet me at the boutique at 11 p.m. I have the money to save your business. Come alone. A friend." To Rylan. "Nadia's hiding cash at her shop. Tonight's your last chance to get what she owes you. Back entrance, 11:15 p.m. I positioned myself across the street with a perfect view of both entrances, my phone connected to the boutique's security system. Aunt Ruth had insisted on upgrading the cameras when she bought the building, high-definition video with audio recording. Nadia arrived first, looking desperate and hollow-eyed. She'd lost weight in the past week, her designer clothes hanging loose on her frame. She fumbled with her keys at the front entrance, glancing nervously over her shoulder. 15 minutes later, Rylan appeared at the back alley. He looked even worse than Nadia, unshaven, wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago, carrying a duffel bag that probably contained everything he owned. Through the security app on my phone, I watched them discover each other inside the boutique. The audio was crystal clear. "What are you doing here?" Nadia demanded. "I could ask you the same thing," Rylan replied. "Someone texted me about hidden money." "There is no money, you idiot. I'm broke. The business is gone, my parents cut me off, and I'm about to be homeless." "Well, that makes two of us. Thanks to your boyfriend's little revenge campaign, I've got nowhere to live and no way to make money." "Ex-boyfriend," Nadia corrected bitterly. "And this is all your fault. If you hadn't been so greedy—" "My fault? You're the one who offered me the money." "Because you said you loved me. Because you said we had a future." Rylan laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Jesus, Nadia, you're not that naive. You were engaged to someone else. What kind of future did you think we'd have?" I watched Nadia's face crumple on the security feed. Even now, even after everything, she'd been holding on to romantic delusions about her affair. "So, it was all just about the money?" she whispered. "It was always about the money. You think I'd waste 3 months of my life on someone like you otherwise?" That's when Nadia snapped. She grabbed a crystal vase from the counter and hurled it at Rylan's head. He ducked, and it shattered against the brick wall behind him. Water and broken glass exploded across the floor. "You used me," she screamed. "We used each other," Rylan shot back. "Don't pretend this was some great love story. You wanted excitement, I wanted cash. Fair trade." Nadia lunged at him with her fingernails extended. Rylan caught her wrists, and they struggled briefly before he pushed her away. She stumbled backward, slipped on the wet floor, and went down hard among the scattered flowers and broken glass. "This is pathetic," Rylan said, grabbing his duffel bag. "I'm done with this shit." He headed for the back exit, but I was ready for him. I triggered the security system remotely. Alarms shrieked through the night air, and automatic locks engaged on both entrances. Rylan found himself trapped, pounding on a door that wouldn't budge. Through my phone, I activated the intercom system. "Good evening, Nadia. Rylan." My voice echoed through the boutique speakers. "Welcome to your final performance." They both spun around, looking for cameras. "Holden?" Nadia's voice was shaky. "Where are you?" "Close enough to watch, far enough to stay clean." I opened a group video call on my phone, adding Tessa, Layla, Freddie, Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, and Greg. One by one, their faces appeared on my screen as they joined the call. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "I'd like you to witness the conclusion of our little drama. Nadia, Rylan, say hello to your audience." I switched the call to share my security feed. Now everyone could see inside the boutique, Nadia on the floor among broken glass and wilted flowers, Rylan trapped at the back door like a caged animal. "You're insane." Nadia struggled to her feet, her dress torn and stained. "I'm thorough," I corrected. "For 3 months, you two conducted your affair in secret. Tonight, we're making it public. Tell them, Nadia. Tell your parents how you stole from our joint account to fund your boyfriend's lifestyle." Mrs. Mercer's voice came through the intercom. "Nadia Elizabeth Mercer, is this true?" Nadia looked directly into the camera, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I can explain." "Explain what? That you're a thief? That you humiliated our family?" Rylan tried a different approach. "Look, this is all a misunderstanding. Nadia and I are just friends." "Friends who sleep together," I interrupted. "Friends who steal together. Friends who lie together." I pulled up the Venmo transaction history on my laptop and shared my screen. Every payment was visible. 3 months of financial adultery laid out in digital detail. "Nadia," Mr. Mercer's voice was ice cold, "you will return every penny you stole from this young man." "I can't. I don't have it." "Then you'll work until you do. Your trust fund is frozen until this debt is paid in full." Rylan was frantically trying to force the back door. "Let me out of here. This is kidnapping." "This is consequences," I replied. "But don't worry, Rylan. I have one final gift for both of you." I activated my laptop's presentation mode and shared my screen with the group call. A detailed slideshow appeared. Bank records, social media posts, restaurant receipts, even photos I'd taken of them together. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the Nadia Files, a complete documentation of financial infidelity, emotional manipulation, and romantic fraud. This presentation will be posted to social media in exactly 60 seconds unless... "Unless what?" Nadia demanded. "Unless you both admit, on camera, exactly what you did. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." Nadia and Rylan looked at each other, trapped between public humiliation and social media destruction. Fine, Nadia said finally. I cheated on Holden with Rylan. I stole money from our joint account to pay for Rylan's rent and expenses. I lied about it for 3 months. And you, Rylan? Rylan's shoulders sagged in defeat. I took money from Nadia knowing she was engaged to someone else. I used her for financial support while pretending to care about her. Beautiful, I said. Honesty looks good on both of you. I canceled the social media upload and disabled the security locks. Both doors clicked open. You're free to go, I announced. But before you do, there's one more thing. Through the intercom, I played a recording, Rylan's own voice from earlier in the evening. You think I'd waste 3 months of my life on someone like you otherwise? Nadia turned to stare at him, the final illusion finally shattered. Goodbye, Nadia, I said through the speakers. Goodbye, Rylan. Try not to steal from anyone else on your way out of town. Rylan bolted for the back exit without a word. Nadia stood alone in the ruins of her boutique, surrounded by broken glass and wilted flowers, facing a camera that broadcast her humiliation to everyone who mattered in her life. Holden, she whispered to the camera, I'm sorry. I know you are, I replied. You're sorry you got caught. I ended the group call and shut down the security feed. Through my binoculars, I watched Nadia emerge from the boutique and walk slowly down 5th Street, her designer heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown timer. She disappeared around the corner, and I never saw her again. 3 days later, Aunt Ruth called with an update. Your flower girl cleared out completely. Left town, apparently. The coffee shop people want to move in next month. Perfect. Any word on Rylan? Vanished like smoke, though I heard his landlord found some very interesting items in his abandoned apartment. Stolen guitars, unpaid bills, a few things that might interest the police. I smiled. Karma's a wonderful thing. Indeed it is, darling. Indeed it is.